we're going to kill it. We're going to crush it. You know, people are going to love this, especially the state of the planet right now. Everybody, it's on top of mind to everybody, but still we came to this crossroads. We're like, got a beautiful product. Our branding's amazing. Our story's incredible. We're supporting 3 NGOs in 3 different countries. Why aren't we selling product?
Welcome to the Backcountry Marketing Podcast. I'm sitting down with James Merrill. He is the CEO of Opolis Eyewear, one of the most sustainable eyewear companies in existence today. James, how are you?
I'm great, Cole. Glad to be here, brother.
Yeah, it's good to have you on the show. Where are you calling in from?
Calling in from Maine, actually. I'm typically in Los Angeles, but I have a lot of work and network here in the state of Maine, so I'm hanging out here.
Yeah, it sounds like you're making some good headway with the business and talking shop with some folks who, well, it sounds like you're back with the research lab right now, right?
Correct. Yeah, and just had a great meeting with them and giving me that enthusiasm I kind of needed to get going again. So really excited about that, and it's nice that it happened right when our conversation is taking place.
Well, being an entrepreneur as you're learning, and I think people can attest to, it's definitely a roller coaster. And that's kind of what we're going to be talking about, James. You know, starting a business is no small feat. And I think as you get into starting a business, you realize that this was actually more of a challenge than I originally thought the challenge was going to be. And I'm excited to dig into your story. I'm excited to share the good word about what you guys are doing over at Opolis, because you're doing some incredible work that has some incredible potential to change how we use recycled plastics. James, as you know, and as you've shared with me, you have a lot of questions. You have a lot of challenges and hurdles that you're trying to overcome with the business and how you're marketing the business. And so I'm excited to kind of open this can of worms and just dive in and see where the conversation takes us. But I'd love if you could kind of kick us off and share a little bit about Opolis, but share also some of maybe the assumptions that you had going into starting a company and how those are different than what you're finding today.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm so glad I have a platform to kind of get this out there to the ethos to see if I get anything back. So cool. I appreciate the opportunity. So I created Opolis 4 years ago. And as we discussed, I thought I created a pretty substantial why I've done it, and what the mission, the impact of the company was going to be, and what it was going to entail. And then this was a time where the iOS updates for the Facebook, Instagram, privacy stuff still hadn't taken effect. So I built the company around the fact that I wanted to do a direct to consumer. I wanted to do the Facebook, Instagram ad through social media, email campaigns, et cetera, just as a way to expedite the reach of the audiences or the demographics that I wanted to hit within a very short period of time. I was so enthusiastic about what we have created, what we stood for, and how we wanted our company to help communities in the planet, that I just wanted to get it going as quickly as possible. But as we all know, soon after the iOS updates did impact the way in which we market, reach, and sell online. And then what that did before the iOS updates happened is that everybody was creating a company. The barrier of entry to create companies within 2017 and 2018 was just super low. So everybody was creating companies. And that by that point, there was 1 million sunglasses companies. There was 1 million eyewear companies. And so the people that got to the stage earlier than I had a huge leg up in their audiences, their sales, their marketing, their narratives, everything. And so I was basically starting from scratch and playing catch up in a very complicated, competitive, and expensive marketplace. So, after creating a business plan, a website, a product, a story, all around the direct-to-consumer business model, it became very clear that it was going to be very difficult. to reach the audiences and to essentially get the conversions that we wanted. And now going through this process, as we all have learned too, the power of the dollar and how deep the pockets are. You can control the narratives, and since there's not a lot of regulation here in the United States on what you can say in terms of what's sustainable, what's green, what's eco, and everything else, those people that had not been sustainable are now in a position where they're saying they are, and they control the narrative because of the amount of money that they have and the demographics that they can address. So what I learned during this process was that not only is this going to be very difficult, but this is going to be very difficult to educate new customers or customers in general why we're different than every other eyewear company in the world. And there's a million of them. And so that was something I was not prepared for, nor did I budget for either. I created a few SKUs for two different collections of eyewear. I went all in and I got that inventory, thinking that based on the trajectories and the models that I had looked at before really starting the company, and be like, we can reach these baselines, these metrics, and these conversions within this period of time. We did not meet any of those, and so that direct to consumer model kind of had to be put on the back burner, and then a new model of wholesale B2B started to have to be realized. And so, as that's a whole other business. And so that probably was the biggest learning lesson that I had, and not having a good, healthy budget in addressing those pivots has kind of prevented me from really reaching the potential that I thought we would have reached 2 years ago, and now we're here 4 years ago, and we're now finally building up some momentum. But yeah, that I think that's been the biggest realization that I made, and understanding that if the direct to consumer marketplace was going to be like it is now, I probably wouldn't even have started the consumer side of the company. And as you know, and we'll discuss it later, it's now kind of developed into something else, exciting, but very different from the direct to consumer.
There's a book by Simon Sinek, and it's called Start With Why, and it's talked about everywhere, and it's a fantastic book, and I've read it a couple times. And there's this idea out there that if you have a strong why, and if you start your business with a strong why, everything else will follow. Everything else will fall into place, because that's what people care about. And James, I'd love if you could share a little bit about your why, a little bit about your personal background and how that led you to start Opolis, because I think that's an integral piece for people to understand what you're doing today. And it kind of dovetails into the rest of what we're talking about. But as you're realizing, having a why isn't enough. It's part of the equation for sure, but it's not the end all be all. But I'd love if you could share your why with us as well.
Sure. Yeah. So Opolis, it means it's Greek for city or community, and basically that just encompasses the entire mission of the company, and it goes back to my roots working as a U.S. government contractor for over a decade, and what that meant is that I lived and worked in communities most at risk for radicalization recruitment. Ranging from the Middle East, Asia, South Asia, and Africa. And when we were looking at the value chain of violence in these places, we started to understand a new trend, or a trend that probably we were not expecting, is that people that were most at risk or most vulnerable for recruitment for ISIS, Al Qaeda, Boko Haram, Al Shabaab, were people and communities living in landfills, in villages and coastlines inundated by plastic, and you start to look into the why there, for that type of kind of strategy for them, and you start to see that these people literally have nothing to lose. They have nothing to provide for their family, and have come to a point where they would do anything to protect their family and to feed their family. And so that was kind of a huge realization, especially in the way that we approach terrorism and recruitment. Uh, and for me personally, that was like my aha moment. Being like, wow, like not only are these people's environments or habitats just inundated with Western plastic pollution, but because of the situation that most of us have put them in, now they're most at risk for the worst acts of violence in the history of mankind, right? And so I was like, if I can figure out a way on my own to kind of, address both of these problems, then why not try to pursue that? So I started working with different international NGOs in these countries that I was operating in, and I kind of just made an agreement with a few of them, being like, "Oh, I'll give you a stipend each month. If I'll pay for your plastic bottles." I had no idea. I just needed a commodity to show that, like, I'll pay for this, in return you give me this, and in return you don't take bribes. That was my thing. So after 10 years of doing that, I amassed a lot of water bottles.
So
And
you were just storing these water bottles
I was just
somewhere?
storing them, having them shipped to. I spent a lot of time in Indonesia, so there's a warehouse in Jakarta, and I just have everything shipped over there. And then after my last assignment in northern Nigeria, it's just I had kind of enough of what I was doing. It no longer was serving me, and in my opinion, I could no longer serve others that way. So I really started just to, like, really delve into who I am and what I wanted to do. If my identity had been wrapped up in a U.S. government contractor for so long, who am I outside of it? And then I started thinking about these communities I'd worked with, and I started thinking about the water bottles that I had no idea what to do with. And so that kind of like, okay, this is kind of cool. I'll look into what I can do with the water bottles. And then you go down that rabbit hole of looking into water bottle technology, or PET technology. And then you start learning about, what people are using it for, commercial, industrial, retail, what you could do with it. And I saw there was a gap in the market in terms of rPET, recycled PET. So water bottles either bound for the ocean or found in the ocean. And seeing a very small percentage of that being used in upcycled durable goods. And if you look at the data now, in most cases, especially in retail or fashion, you're looking at very, very low percentage of rPET being put back into a durable good. Let's just say sunglasses, because that's what I created. Our competitors out there are making ocean waste, but they're not really defining that, and using very small percentages of ocean waste, depending whether or not that's fish nets or water bottles or recycled nylon or polyester. And I get crazy around people that are saying that they're sustainable when they're using recycled polyester or nylon, because honestly that's just a main ingredient in a lot of injection molded plastic products. So anyway, I said, well, okay, let's create a lifestyle brand that I can support these communities and help the planet, in a very small way. So I just assumed honestly, that I could take all my water bottles, send it to a manufacturer, and have them make sunglasses out of them. And realizing very quickly that that's not possible, and there's a reason why all the competitors, all the brands out there aren't using 100% rPET in their production. And that's simply because rPET, because of the molecular integrity, has been just beaten up while it's been sitting in the landfill or ocean, and it's been degraded for over a period of time. That those molecular, the tensile strength in that water bottle has been severely degraded, so it's super delicate. So when we made molds out of 100% water bottles, it would just basically deteriorate in your hands. They were so flimsy, they were so brittle. So we started to understand, or I started to understand, like, okay, we need to figure out a way to rebuild the delicate like integrity of the molecular makeup of that water bottle. And so that kind of brought me down this rabbit hole or journey into the supply chain and R&D of making a consumable product, ensuring that it is an honest and authentic value or supply chain, and that it contributes to a circular economy. And so that was like this whole revelation that I had as well, is that, if I wanted to make a product and be true to what I was saying, I really had to address every aspect of this, from the person that is collecting the water bottle, to the transportation, to the pelletization of the rPET of the water bottle, to the consumer. We had to think about every aspect of that, which can be quite complex and expensive. So you can start to understand where a lot of my funding went. And so that's essentially what kind of created what we now have patented, stoked plastic. And it's something that just kind of happened. You hear about these moments that people have when they invent things, but honestly, it was just something that hadn't been created yet, and something that I'm super proud of, because ultimately, I think stoked plastic, what we're able to do with it in terms of durable good production, can revolutionize how we make plastic products. So that kind of was that has led me into the why, that has kind of put legs on this movement, and then has certainly kind of contributed to this overall passion that I've come to realize through this thing, that through stoked plastic and through the right people, the right communities, the right platforms, the right marketing, we could make a huge impact on the planet. And so that's like why I was like, wow, I got something like really beautiful and really like new and different. Like, we're going to kill it. We're going to crush it. People are going to love this, especially the state of the planet right now. Everybody, it's on top of mind to everybody, but still we came to this crossroads. We're like, got a beautiful product. Our branding's amazing. Our story's incredible. We supporting three NGOs in 3 different countries. Why aren't we selling product? And that kind of brings us back to our conversation, Cole.
Can you share a little bit about the capabilities of this technology that you're developing? And I guess, is this the fact that we don't see a lot of recycled plastic and durable goods? Is
Yeah.
this why? Because I guess this is why we see more recycled plastic in soft goods, because it's an easier process to recycle those.
Yeah, and this is something that I was discussing with my lab this morning, and because we were looking at the viscosity of different levels of rPET and plastic testing, of like how durable and how hard we could get these upcycled type of concepts. And you start to learn, like, the rPET is so delicate that really taking an extruder is a machine that allows you to basically repurpose and examine these different forms of plastic. And then through this extruding process, you learn, like, you can make little threads of plastic. And then you can start to think like, oh, wow, you could make that little tube this thin and this thin to make it to actually be fabric. And you don't need any additives or blends to do that. So making fabric out of rPET, recycled PET, or recycled water bottles is something very easy to do. And honestly, it's something that we all should do. But, and Cole, we've talked a little bit about this too. The problem with that, a problem with making fabric 100% out of rPET, especially fabric or products that are going to be put in the wash, then you're dealing with a bigger problem, right? You're dealing with microplastics getting released into the water stream, and then essentially in your food and back into your body. And then you're looking at a larger issue there. So that's why I've kind of chosen to stay away from the fabric side, and primarily focused on the durable goods. We still do fabric for certain products that don't get washed. But our bread and butter, and I think what makes us more unique is the durable good production. And you will see as you learn more about plastics, there are there are products out there made out of plastic that use harder, stronger plastic, like shampoo bottles, detergent bottles. That's HDPE. That's a very durable plastic. And actually, it's very easy to upcycle. And a lot of industrial companies will recycle those and put those back into productions and have had great success doing that. But using an HDPE like detergent bottle or a shampoo bottle to make a consumer product like a pair of sunglasses, it doesn't work. It's too hard. There's no flexibility. There's it's really restrictive on colorways and how you manipulate that plastic. So our pet is actually it's the perfect product for making a more premium good. It's just that, well, I shouldn't say rPET, PET. So virgin PET is what is in all of our plastic consumable goods. But rPET can get you as close to that tensile strength or durability or flexibility if you're adding certain additives that we've kind of created. And that's what we've done with Stoked Plastic, is that we're helping rebuild the delicacy of the molecular degradation of that water bottle, almost getting it back to that virgin property. So we're almost using materials that are virgin, and that's kind of what we've proven with our sunglasses and our snowboard and ski goggles at this point. But yeah, it's been just this crazy education on all the different plastics in the world, and you want to be able to use all of them. I would love to use all of them. For me, the data states that water bottles are still a huge problem. They're going to continue to be a huge problem in our planet in these communities. That this is something that this is where I focus. There's companies that focus on fishing nets. I focus on the water bottle, the outbound and ocean found water bottle, because in my opinion, there's more capabilities, more applications within the consumable good world that we can do with this type of material.
Man, I got to imagine you didn't think 5 years ago or 6 years ago that you would know this much about plastic.
No, I was a religion major, and then working for the U.S. government, and now I spend more time in a chemistry lab trying to learn about all these different terms and formulas and trying to figure out what I remember from the periodic table. And my head technician this morning was just talking to me. It was just like way over. I'm like, okay, we got to back up. Like, talk to me like I'm 8 years old, right? But yeah, it's cool though, because I love learning, and this is just part of it.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's incredibly fascinating. And like hearing your story, I mean, it makes it more apparent why what you're trying to do is that important. Like,
Yeah,
I mean, you have a very rare experience
right,
being in these countries and witnessing the lives of these people firsthand
right,
and seeing the impact of what plastic does. And so
right.
I guess that kind of leads me to my next question, which is like, you have an incredibly compelling why. Like, I'm hooked. Like, I want to support you as much as I can. Do people care about whys? Like, we say that people care about whys, and it's important to have a why, and that the consumer looks for companies that have a strong mission. But is that true? I guess, what's your perception of that?
Yeah, that's a great question, and something that I've learned the hard way and been kind of really discouraged, especially with my conversation with like private equity groups, venture capital groups that have approached me. But they're like, yeah, we like the why, but our customers only care about the product. They only care if it performs, if it's premium, and if it's popular. So if you can hit those 3 points, and then you
What
have
were
the
those three again?
premiality or high quality, popularity, and price point.
Okay.
And that's something that frustrated the heck out of me. Being like, okay, I feel like my why should be more important than those three. I have all three, but our platform, our stance is the why. This is why you should buy ours. This is why you should support Opolis, because it directly impacts and supports the planet and the communities. This is why you would feel good participating and buying a product from us. But honestly, if it didn't live up to certain expectations to certain people, to certain brands, and I won't call them out, you know, I wouldn't even be a thought, a consideration. Especially nowadays, the popularity is a big one. Is a big one for sure.
And that's just like street cred,
Street
or
cred, yeah. How many
okay.
stores you're in, how many followers you have, the very surface level thing that, has unfortunately infiltrated our society and what we perceive as good or worthy or worth our time, that definitely directs, impacts the way that we look at the marketplace, I believe as well.
Huh. Is that frustrating? That sounds like it'd be frustrating for you to be in that position.
So frustrating because, as you can tell, Cole, I'm very passionate about what I do and what I've been doing. And then when it's not reciprocated in the way that I thought it would, especially now that we're seeing, massive floods, fires. I mean, this is on every single day on the television now. This is top of mind. This is happening. So I thought that this would not only be something that people would care about, but it would provide an opportunity for people to contribute to a problem that they feel like is so big, so outside themselves that their participation in that doesn't matter. And that's the problem. And I thought this would provide like a very low hanging fruit for people to participate in a very small and meaningful way. So yeah, it has been very frustrating, and it's been frustrating talking to certain groups and people and trying to sell them on why this is a good thing to invest in or sell them on why this is a good product. And when I find myself doing that, and now I've kind of stopped myself and I've like, all right, I realize that this is probably not the right fit and have to step away from it because my ego and just my pride and it just can't suffer that, right? And I have to save myself from that. So
I read a stat that I'll share with you that kind of speaks to what you're talking about. And it's the delta between people wanting to pay more for something they care about and executives' perception of people paying more for things that they care about. And it
okay.
says this: 2/3 of consumers say they will pay more for sustainable products, with equally 2/3 of retailers believing that consumers will not pay more for sustainable products.
Yeah, that kind of resonates exactly with what I've been saying. It's pretty depressing.
But
Like,
it's interesting,
can
right?
you even
Like, we're
believe that though? That's like crazy.
everyone wants the same thing, but it seems like there's different stories that are being told and different belief systems and different stories that are encouraging those beliefs that create this larger ecosystem that we all operate within.
Correct, 100%. And that's something as a small company like mine, I've struggled to find those people that are on the same wavelength as I am, right? And those are the same people though, Cole, that are fanatics of like Patagonia and these incredible brands out there that have been doing great things for the environment for years and years and years. I just think that in a way sometimes it's detrimental to new groups, new brands coming into that market because they almost monopolize it, right? People have their blinders. If doesn't have the Patagonia flag on it, people just they don't trust it. And I can't blame them for that, honestly, because you have no idea what to trust, with just how we think about news and facts and how everything is shared these days. It's very difficult. And so that's why opportunities to talk to you, Cole, and people like you, so that they can see that I've thought about every aspect of this process and they can see the enthusiasm that we are very authentic in what we're trying to do, but struggle to do that. Because at the end of the day, when I'm not making money, it's okay. But when I'm not making money, I can't help the communities that I've promised, right? And I that keeps me up at night. It really upsets me that I can't keep promises that I made to these folks in Indonesia and the Philippines and Africa, and that's what keeps me going. And honestly, if I didn't have the help through some of our wholesale accounts and other like bootstrapping ways that I've come to find some investment, we still wouldn't be here. So that's honestly kind of like what really keeps me going for sure, and what should be the point of all this.
Why do you think it's hard for consumers to trust up and coming sustainable brands? You mentioned that
Mm.
the Patagonias of the world might make it more difficult for smaller businesses to show up and operate.
Yeah, I just think that because there's no regulation of how we market products in the United States. I know Europe is like beyond us in terms of how you have to register, trace, sign up for how you promote your brand and company. That's just not in existence here. And I don't think the customer. I think sometimes the customer, the market, is too overwhelmed with the information that they get, and they don't know what to trust. So that's why they would go to a Patagonia, or an REI. They feel like that those channels of manufacturing and producing have already been vetted, and that they can feel good about that product. And I agree, for the in most cases, yes, they are. But because Instagram and Facebook and our market is so saturated with disinformation, people will only go to the resources that they know can be trusted. And I don't know how you get there, Cole, yet. If you're not a Patagonia, if you're not an REI, if you're not, outer known, if backcountry, whatever, how you actually get into that without being basically like, Patagonia, I have eyewear for you. Instead of building my own brand, I'll just make it for you. Because that's honestly the only way that we're going to be able to get into the marketplace, make a difference, and make money essentially. So that's, yeah, I think that's my answer to your question. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like what you're saying is that people are just wary. They're
Yes.
unsure
Yes.
what to trust, who to trust. And I've
Yeah.
got another stat for you.
Okay.
This is from the Business of Sustainability study, and I can link these in the show notes if people
Yeah,
want
that's
to look
great.
at them.
Yeah.
78% of people who responded to this study reported that they wanted to buy from environmentally friendly companies, but they don't know how to identify them. I find that interesting because maybe it's just a lack of education across the board, but there's a number of third party verification, nonprofits that help with this. I can think of, 1% for the planet. I'm totally blanking on all of the others. I
Yeah, you
think
can get B Corp, you can get climate neutral. We're
right.
1%. We're going through the climate neutral, and we're doing the B Corp thing. But so I have feelings about that too, Cole. It's like the blue label on like the tuna fish can, right? You have no idea if that's been fished. But there's a lobbying groups that have created that pay for that label, right? And a lot of groups too have approached us and asked if we have those certifications, and I say no, and well, they're like, well, that's a part of our criteria to work with you. I'm like, well, how would I just give you the emails and the phone numbers of the people on the ground in Indonesia, in the Philippines, that are actually doing this for me, and they can vouch for me. So I kind of have a weird relationship with those certifications. It's almost like, BP donating money to the Amazon forest. You know, while we're a 1% for the planet member, and that has been great. There was a great network, and people actually know that name, so that does help with our notoriety, and people being like, "Oh, Opolis is a 1% for the planet member. They must be legit," and that does help. And all those certifications do, but then I think they do add to a little bit of a little bit of greenwashing around companies that aren't doing it, because I don't think the verification process is quite as strict as it needs to be.
And I got to imagine I guess I'm making some assumptions here, but the market that you operate in, like the product that you sell, isn't just for people in the outdoor industry. Like a pair of sunglasses, anyone can wear a pair of sunglasses. And I
Correct.
would
Yeah.
assume that people in the outdoor industry, they have probably a deeper understanding of how to vet products, how to find sustainable products, and they know what 1% for the planet means or what B Corp means.
Right.
On average, maybe your consumer who isn't within the industry, but still who wants a stylish pair of
Sure.
shades,
Yeah.
they don't necessarily know what they're looking for. And so when they see something on Instagram that looks basically the same
Mm-hmm.
and both are making similar claims, even though one is verified and one isn't, like they don't know how to make that distinction. I guess, do you feel like that's a factor? Do you see that?
Absolutely, and that person will choose that verified brand over the non, for sure, 100%, and that's a part of it. That's a really great point, Cole. And doesn't that make sense though?
Right.
If you're not really in the industry and you're just looking for a good pair of shades and that don't harm the environment. Let's like compare apples to apples here, and then they're probably looking at the verification and the price point too. If it's a little cheaper and if it has verification, then obviously it's pretty obvious like what that decision should be. And that's another thing that we compete with as well. I don't want to get too controversial, but there's other eyewear companies that are saying that they have a formula trademarked and it makes them more environmentally friendly. But as you and I, Cole, we could trademark our first and last name. I mean, you don't need science or anything to do trademarks. And I think people get confused the difference between intellectual property, patents, and trademarks or registration marks. So that's a whole other thing. And I think it always boils down to the right education, educating the market. And honestly, when I was doing ad spend, because I haven't activated it in over 6 months, most of our money was going into educational marketing, the us versus them stats around oil-based or oil petroleum-based production stuff, where we'll be. But you know what? I think there's an overkill too. I think people are so overwhelmed with just how much crap there is to be disappointed in that they don't want to hear that anymore. They want solutions. And I think that's kind of what we're trying to do at this point, is being a little bit more optimistic in what we can do. And hopefully that will resonate a little bit better, even if we don't have the certifications that they're looking for as of right now. We're at least trying to provide solutions.
What do you think it would take for a story or a product to, I'll say, break the paradigm? Like it comes out, it permeates society, it kind of rocks everyone. Like everyone looks up from their phones and they see whatever this thing is that we're talking about. I'm always really interested in like those types of large movements and how they take hold and how they grow and how they reach that tipping point where they have that critical mass. Like I'm curious from your perspective, what do you think are the ingredients for something like that? Because it seems like you have some of the right ingredients, but what are the missing ingredients?
Yeah, for some reason I'm reflecting back to what happened with GameStop, where they wanted to take it back from the corporations and the people, right? The community. They invested in it themselves. And honestly, if I could go back to how I started the company and started thinking about how funding it, I probably would resort back to more of a crowdsourcing type of fundraiser so that the community becomes a part of the solution and they have incentives to be a part of that success. Because right now in the American culture, I think that's what resonates the most right now. You know, and that's probably what a brand or a product could do coming out the door swinging and doing really well, is if there is this mass community movement that said, we believe in it because, and this is why we're going to continue to invest our time and money into it. And that's a really good question, Cole. And I think about that a lot. I think about that a lot. And it's just like, Jovan Chenard, giving the company, giving Patagonia to the public. That's probably the steps that are going to need to be taken to actually make a true change within the consumable American marketplace right now, I believe.
Do you feel like environmental stories are they too far from home for people to really care about? I mean, I think surface level we all care about them,
Mm-hmm.
but on a deeper level, when it comes to how we spend our money, are they Are they too big for us to really buy into it, or to support?
Probably too big, and we're too isolated. You know, and I get criticism too, because a lot of people say, well, there's enough plastic in the United States. Why aren't you just and then obviously poor neighborhoods and communities and counties that are dealing with plastic pollution at a high level. Like, why aren't you using the supply chain here in the United States, and why aren't you employing Americans to do the advocating for that? First of all, a lot of Americans don't want to pick up trash, and second of all, since the Chinese are no longer purchasing our cardboard or water bottles anymore, our recycling infrastructure is so broken that we're exporting our trash back to the developing world. And when I lived in the Middle East, in Pakistan, and Bangladesh, and Papua New Guinea, and then Kenya, you see some of the largest landfills in the world, and all of this stuff is produced by the Americans, and it's coming from the United States, right? You really start to understand the impact of what this is doing, not only to our planet, but by the people that are directly like dealing with it on a day-to-day basis. And especially with COVID, it's restricted a lot of American movement as well, and now people are more kind of tied at home. I think people are traveling less to less desired places, but even in the more desirable places, go to Bali, go to Palawan in the Philippines. Rivers of plastic pollution, and it's either ignorance or just being okay with the plastic being there, and then coming back to your perfectly manicured lawn and river and ocean here in the United States. You're still seeing the impact of that with the fires, with the flooding. So it's one of those things where I wish every American sometimes could have had my experience and go to these places, work with these people, and these people have smiles on their face. The things they're able to do with plastic and junk in general, just to repurpose and live with and invent, is incredible. It's incredible. But I think there's a misinformation around our own recycled infrastructure. I would love one day to like put a GoPro on my like recycling bin or recycling bottle and just watch it, just to see how it's moved, where it's put, and then how it's purposed. Because we just assume we throw our stuff in the blue bins, right? Oh, we did our part, and that's where it ends. But we have no idea if that stuff is actually being upcycled, sorted, repurposed, and then put back into the marketplace. Honestly, that's always been an experiment I've loved to try.
Reminds me of a film. I can't remember the name, but there was a GPS tracker put on a salmon, and this film followed this
Cool.
salmon as it traveled. It was like 1,000 miles or 1,500 miles
No way.
inland to
Okay.
spawn.
Yeah.
And I wonder if you could do something similar. I don't know how you'd get the GPS tracker through the system without it being found.
Found or something like that. Yeah. There's got to be a way. That would just be such a great social experiment, though, right? Just to
I wonder if
see.
that's been done. Has anyone set out a water bottle with a GPS tracker in the ocean and just see where it ends up?
Maybe. You know what? I've got some homework to do after we get off of this podcast. But yeah, I definitely, maybe something's out there. I'm always thinking about the plastic bag in American Beauty. It's just like floating around, because I knew there was a documentary on a plastic bag that they basically followed it as it floated across the United
Oh,
States.
interesting.
But I don't know what type of data was collected. But again, it goes back to the misinformation around our even our own infrastructure around plastic pollution. Because I think once we're done with that, we feel good about it, and we're like, it's done. But the overall impact is devastating. You know.
So it sounds like you mentioned you've been doing a lot of education marketing.
Yeah.
If resources and time weren't a consideration, what sort of education campaign or idea would you want to do that you could hope that would kind of shake people and shake the paradigm a little bit? Like, what if you could come up with anything, what would you want to do?
Well, yeah, I would love to like take certain members of each state to some of these countries that we're working in, right? Being a part of that, seeing firsthand. what these folks have to go through, and kind of the devastation that they see on a day-to-day basis. And not just any people, I would suppose, Cole, too. If we're really talking about no resources and time wasn't an issue, taking politicians, you know, getting Congress and Senate members, House and Senate members to go see these places, and even have them go see our own recycling centers. You know, I think that would be huge, because at the end of the day, it's corporations and governments that make major decisions on on the infrastructure of change. And if they're working together to keep the status quo, then that's going to be the real issue, and that's going to be the biggest obstacle for any group, any brand, anyone trying to make a difference in this area, right? Because I always use Europe as an example. I mean, they've been doing incredible things when it comes to new legislation and regulation around plastic pollution, around how you can say your product is sustainable, and having to like fit all these new criterias. And it's honestly, I don't even know why we haven't set up the same form, and probably because we make too much money off of the loose regularities and policy around this stuff. So
It's strange though, because that policy exists for other products, like the auto industry. The auto industry
you're right.
has to outline how much of the vehicle was made in each country, right? And I was just reading, like an F-150, 56% of it is made in the U.S.
Yeah,
and
you're
everything
right.
else is sourced from other places. So why
Yeah,
isn't
you're right. And even the
yeah, it's
FDA,
strange.
right? Even our food is so regulated, Um, and and to be fair, as I've been researching more and more, the state of Oregon and Maine and California and these different individual states are now putting in motion new legislation for 2030 around accountability and traceability of products in the marketplace within their state, right? If you're planning on selling or manufacturing within that state, they have to meet different criterias. But federally, like where is this rhetoric, or these laws, so it is good to see that that's happening. New York City, I think, was one of them too. But and you got to focus on the little changes, I suppose, seeing that development. But I think on scale, I don't think it's nowhere near it needs to be, right? So
So I feel like we've asked a lot of questions in this conversation so far, which I love.
yeah,
I love questions. Knowing everything that you know and everything that you're learning on an hour by hour, daily by daily basis,
yeah.
what's the strategy? How do you take the mission further and continue to find success? Like, what are things that you're trying? What are things that you're hoping to try? What has led to success? What are you hoping to double down on?
Yeah, well, we've been lucky enough where we've had an opportunity. Outdoor Retailer, that big trade show, the biggest outdoor trade show in the country. We've won awards from them, and we've won awards from other states and whatnot. So getting that validation and accolades has helped create a platform, especially getting in front of even our competitors have come and approached us and being like, look, we love what you're doing. How can we be a part of this? And so those discussions are those discussions are exciting, because they're looking at us, they're looking for a solution, and they're looking at us to help fulfill that solution. So we've come to a point where we've created this brand that is now almost like our proven concept of what we can do with this patent material. Now, what would happen if we actually created another company based on the concept, so that we could accommodate others, so that to ensure that they're using the same type of formula, process, production? Because honestly, capitalism by nature is actually a good thing, and being competitive within capitalization is very healthy, and it creates change, it creates momentum, it creates impact. So why not share some of this, technology with other people? Because, having a big brand, a big competitor come in and use our supply chain, how many people in Indonesia that would help? How many like people in the landfill in Nairobi would support. So we have been kind of pivoting into almost this business to business model slash other company that supports our proven concept with the sunglasses and goggles. That's kind of where we see ourselves right now. But honestly, if I want to see Opolis succeed on its own, it's working with well-known advocates, it's working with well-known athletes, it's working with bigger environmental groups, protect our winners, 1% for the planet, all of those, to kind of really get the message out there. And obviously celebrities, finding a celebrity that feels the same way that we do and wants to make a difference, using their platform and reach would honestly be huge for us. And those are all things that we're addressing, Cole, and things that we're working through, and some that we're seeing now some momentum with, and so trying to leverage both the direct to consumer and B2B side to work harmoniously together to support each one of them, because we wouldn't have the material side if we didn't have the sunglasses side, right? Because that's kind of what has opened the doors up for what we think could be huge for us. So
If you could choose one thing to do differently or to improve with how things are currently operating, kind of in the marketing world, like what would you want to wave a magic wand at and change or do differently or improve?
oh god, that's a really good question. I always, I always come back to this, Cole, about the obstacles and the frustrations I've always had with ad spend, both on Instagram and TikTok. And I've never really bought into that, but I understood it was a necessary, I'll call it evil, to get your product out there and see some conversions. But I honestly wish that there was some process within the ad spend marketing where it could verify and vet certain initiatives, it meets certain criteria, right? So if there was an algorithm within Instagram or Facebook or TikTok, and it was meeting these philanthropic or habitat or environmental initiatives, that they would get almost a discount, and they would get in front of a designated group of people. And I honestly thought like that would be such an amazing thing. Just I think that would just be a good thing for us as a culture to have, because no longer, because as you know, Cole, you go on Instagram and you're not even seeing what your followers are posting. You're seeing ads the entire time. You're being fed all this crap all the time, and you're not knowing what to trust and what to trust. And so I wish there was some type of facet within that platform or algorithm that would kind of create certain criterias. And then, honestly, who knows what's going to be happening with AI now too. Maybe that will be a part of it. Maybe that will be a part of the coding of AI. And I just, AdSpent was such a huge platform and it was so powerful. But now it's just completely, greenwashed and saturated, that platform is no longer a reasonable marketplace for me. So, which is why, again, I've gone into wholesale. That's pretty much my bread and butter, because finding wholesalers, brands, and stores that can be an extension of yourself in person has been critical for me, and it's what's been keeping the lights on. But even like I get frustrated with our email marketing. I think I have 15,000 subscribers, and I barely get any conversions. And I always wonder. I'm like, okay, so what do my subscribers want to continue seeing? Do they need to see more product, new product? Do they need to see better prices? Do they need to see more environmental cases? Like, just that type of information that could be readily available, I think around those type of criteria would be helpful, both on an ad spend and an email marketing kind of effort, for sure.
I like the idea of a green check mark.
Yeah.
That can't be bought.
Right, exactly. And just so and obviously you have to register Instagram, right, and everything as a business, but then there's another kind of subcategory of that verification being like, oh, you're a member here, or you've climate neutrality, or you're a part of this NGO or whatnot, that you could click and be like, okay, you can come in, you can get the green check mark, you get a discount at ad spent, and then there you go. Here's your proven demographic. I always thought about that, and I thought that would be a great idea for young companies like mine, but then for bigger ones as well. That can help push that.
Well, I got to assume that with most everything in life, good things just take time.
Yeah.
You're what, 3-4 years into this now?
Yeah, I'm coming up on 4 years now. It's crazy. Yeah, it's crazy.
4 years seems like a long time, but in the grand scheme of
No,
things, it's a relatively short amount of
you're
time.
right. You're absolutely right,
And
Cole.
we always talk about Patagonia as this great example. Well, they've been around for, I should know this, but they were started like mid 80s, 87, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe before then. But it seems like as long as you just continue plugging away, like time's on your side.
Yeah. And that's something that like mentors and people that have made it big have always said to me. They're like, James, if you get through, you can keep the lights on through your third year, you're doing good. You're doing well. And I have to keep telling myself that I'm still here. I'm like, Thomas the Engine, the little train that could, that we're just keep on plugging away and scrapping for cash and any means we can to, keep pushing the mission forward and helping where we can, for sure.
Well, James, I want to thank you for taking the time to share your story and honestly just be vulnerable and sharing the questions that you're asking yourself. Like that's what I love about this show is we get to just ask questions and we don't have to know all the answers. And I appreciate your willingness to share those questions and also just share some of your passion, because this isn't a world that I know much about. And I got to assume a lot of our listeners don't know a lot about also. So I want to say thank you, because I know, not everyone would jump on a podcast and talk about the things that they don't know.
Oh man, I've just learned so much from my insecurity and the things that I don't know, that I just continue to do it. And Cole, I really appreciate this opportunity and just meeting you in general. I know when we first met, you probably had no idea what to do with me, because I come from a different kind of world in the way that we got started, but the way that you've listened and been genuine about every aspect of this process has meant a lot to me. So thank you.
Thank you. If folks are listening and they want to learn more about your story, if they want to connect, if they have ideas that they want to share, where would you recommend people go and find you? And where can people find Opolis?
Yeah, so they can find us in LO Bean, some REI locations. There's a big brand called Seabags that's based in the Northeast. They have 60 stores across the United States. We're on all of them. But you can find us on our website, www.opolisoptics.com. Has everything you need. You can get in touch with me. You can find our Instagram handle, Facebook, LinkedIn, and all that jazz. But it has a good wealth of information right there.
Awesome. Before we sign off, is there any last minute ask or plug you want to give before we disappear for the rest of the day?
Yeah, just understand that to help the planet, we need to help the people first, that are impacted by it severely. And it's not until we can help them that the planet can benefit. So that's kind of that's what I always leave people with, and why we kind of started this in the first place. So thank you for letting me have
Beautiful.
that word.
Yeah. Well, James, thank you again. I'm looking forward to checking in with you and seeing how things are going in the next 3 months, but the next 4 years, I got to imagine you're going to be making some waves out there.
Inshallah. Well, I hope so. Thanks, Cole. I really appreciate it.
All right. Have a great rest of your day.
All right, cool.
See ya.